pretty slick, doesn't it? I'm Michael Robinson, this is crafted in Florida. You want to see how to build that? Watch the rest of this video. Check it out. Alright, let's get into this build. First thing you gotta do is go get yourself a whole bunch of white oak, right? Whole bunch. Way more than you think. Trust me, way more than one trip. I had made a sample for the customer so that they could see what it looks like in the space. So I'm taking that sample right here and figuring out exactly how many of these white oak hexagons I'll be making to really make it look like a honeycomb. So what I'm doing is just tracing it on the table. I knew that we needed a 4x8 area, so I'm using my 4x8 sheet of plywood table to make sure that all that fits exactly. Next thing I'm going to do is rip them down. Total depth of these is going to end up being 6 inches. So what I'm doing here, I've got S3S, meaning that it's smooth on 3 sides from the distributor. So I'm taking that smooth edge, cutting it down to about 1/8 of an inch bigger than the final depth. So I'll run it through the saw, get all the pieces ripped down to about 1/6 and 1/8, and then I'll come back later and rip it down to that final 6 inches, but that way I get 2 smooth, straight edges using a table saw, not having to run everything through the joiner, because my tool setup is just not that good. As you can see, I'm running off of a job site table saw. But this process is obviously quite time consuming when you're running all these pieces through. Next thing I'm going to do is clean up those faces. So I'm running them through the planer. These are already at 4/4, which is technically just under an inch. So what I'm doing is bringing them down about that 1/4 of an inch, cleaning up both sides. That way I know that I'm starting with a nice smooth piece. Even though they're S3S, they tend to come with a little bit of roughness to them. So that planing will just, clean them up a little bit more, make the sanding a little easier, and give us a better final product in the end. See these short pieces, this is a good way. I got rid of a ton of scraps in this project because I knew I was going to need small pieces. So all these cutoffs from before, I was able to use them on this project. You can see right here we're running a whole big old stack through the planers. I like to do this because then I know I can just put them on the edge that's already been planed and then flip them right back over, run them back through the other side. Plus it makes a pretty cool little time lapse, don't you think? Once I get it all cleaned up, because my dust collection is not that good, take them over to the miter saw and it's time to set up a stop block and just chop, chop, chop. We're running these things. A lot of people like to go ahead and make their miters at this point, but I prefer to do my miters in this case on the table saw. So I'm just doing straight cuts, getting them down to size. These were about 8 inches for the smaller hexagons, and then because I haven't put together a good sled yet, which definitely make a good sled, that may be a later video, I used my miter gauge, and in this case I needed to add a little block to get the piece exactly where it needed to be to create my 30-degree cut. This way I can slide the whole piece through, get a nice straight cut right at 30 degrees. Smack that little scrap out of the way. Flip it around to the other side. And smooth like butter. Now that I've done that once, it's time to do it about 180 more times on both sides. So we're running that through there. I need solid 30 degrees all the way across to create the least amount of gaps when I'm gluing it all together. And it's repeat, over and over. God, I tell you, there were so many pieces on this. It's about 300 times. Now move over, I'm gonna put biscuits in these. I like to do the biscuits to keep the alignment. It'll also help when we do the glue up. That way they're not moving around as much. It's gonna keep them locked in place. Because I was doing so many of them, I went ahead and put a little jig together on the workbench. Piece of board on the side, piece of board on the back to keep it in place. See, that's a biscuit. Not your Nana's biscuits, but biscuit. And then that top board keeps me in the same spot for each piece. You can see my cheap old Harbor Freight biscuit joiner that I got when I first started woodworking. About my company started 8 years ago, so this thing is 8 years old, and for 30 bucks it's gotten I've sure gotten a lot of use out of it. Every now and then you got to give it a little love to get it to push, grease the old wheels a little bit, but it still works. Probably could use a new blade. You saw some of the inside of those, they're a little burnt. Yeah, nice clean work surface. Use that duster, that way. See, look, work, push. Okay, yeah, there we go. It got the job done. Listen, it was a struggle session for a little bit, but it still got the job done. And as it limps to the finish there, we're going to move on to the next portion of this project, and yeah, sanding. But I'm sanding the insides and some of the sides just to give us a little bit of a head start, because sanding inside of the hexagons is a little bit more difficult. Now we're going to move over to the glue up. On the glue up, I use the Titebond Thick and Quick. You can see me display it there like I'm actually important, but nevertheless it worked well in order to get these pieces in place, glued up, and then I use the ratchet strap clamps in order to keep them all together. And the Thick and Quick, because it dries pretty quick, at least sets up, it allows for me to move on to the next one pretty quickly. So I ran through 4 of these at a time. By the time I got to the 5th one, the first one was dry enough that I could take it out of clamps and reuse that clamp. We ended up doing 30 plus hexagons, so having the ability to get them in and out of clamps in a relatively quick time frame was pretty useful. I'm a big fan of glue on both sides, so you'll see me lay it heavy on one side, add a little bit more to the other side, and then we slide those biscuits into place. Now it's that nice ratchet strap. I like this. I just found it the other day. Works pretty well. It comes with pieces for a typical 90-degree glue up, but because we're doing 6 angles here, I took those off. And then important to check for square with the hexagon. Yes, that is the thing. Making sure that all your cross joints are even so that you don't have a wonky shaped hexagon. And then a little tap of the hammer will get it into place, clean up some of that squeeze out. We'll make sure that they're all flush on the top. Sometimes they need a little more love than others. But boom, there you go. Look at me, giving thumbs up. There's one. Now, a whole bunch more. Once I finished all the small ones, I decided to go ahead and lay them out so I can send this over to the customer and give them an idea of what it all looks like. like I said, I knew I was doing it to basically fill a 4x8 section on the wall. They have a 12-foot wall, so we had a little bit of play to go hang over just a little bit, but I wanted to kind of get an idea because a few of these are going to get a back panel, and I kind of wanted to know which ones I needed to add that back panel to. So I laid them all out, got up on a ladder to take a nice overview picture to send it to the customer. We knew that we were going to be putting a couple whiskey bottles each. I also knew that we'd be able to use the tops of the top ones as shelving as well. So I think it turned out pretty nice. There's the layout. Now that back panel that I was talking about, I set up my router bit on the router table to give me a little rabbit in the back. Just gently glide that piece through all the way around. For the 1/2-inch panel that was going in the back, I did basically 2 passes. I ran through that first pass about a 1/4 inch up, because it's a 1/4 inch bit that I use for my cabinets, actually, cabinet doors. And so we ran this through once, moved the router bit up a little bit, and ran it through again. And after sanding, which you don't need to see all that sanding, move on to the finish. Using General Finishes semi-gloss, a little clear coat. Even with a fresh can, I still like to run it through the strainer just to be safe. This Fuji sprayer is pretty slick. Now that I got it up and running, we are spraying that clear coat on there. Always important when you're doing your finish to make sure you got a clean surface to work on. Wipe them down, blew any extra dust off of there, spread them out all over the shop. And look, slow-mo. It's really better on Instagram than in the video, but I think it's pretty cool. And as the great wood prophet John Malecki says, let us spray. And boom, there they are, all installed. Really pops off of this black wall that the customer did. Love that look. Put a few whiskey bottles on them before I left just to make sure that we got a good look for it, and not that hard, right? Hey, if you like this video, hit the like button, share it, subscribe, do all that kind of stuff. Till the next one, y'all be good.